Welcome back for another episode of the TFD Performance Podcast. Today's episode is something I've been looking forward to doing for a long time. We're going to take a little bit of a detour for what we normally talk about, but this is an episode that if you're an athlete, you absolutely should listen to. I'm joined by Mr. Tim Simpson, all the way from Los Angeles, California. Tim, welcome on board.
What's up, Geordie? Thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, I'm equally excited. You know, as you know, you and I have had a lot of conversations about, obviously the business side, the management side, but I also love everything you do as it relates to food, nutrition, health and wellness. So this is going to be a fun one for me.
Yeah, every time me and Tim go on tour together, just to give you guys a little bit of background, Tim is the sports agent and manager to some of the best athletes in the world. And in the world of MMA, he looks after the who's who, like quite literally the top, I wouldn't even say 1%, the top 0.1% of athletes we can talk about. If the first name that you think of when you hear MMA, everyone thinks of the same name. That's one of Tim's clients. It's how big he is. That's how good these guys are, what they do. But every time me and Tim are on tour together, we always get talking about health and nutrition because it's such a important role for what Tim does in his job. And I think for all of the corporate guys that listen into the podcast and all of my clients who are in that corporate field, they realize the importance of nutrition, hydration, training, fitness, mindset, just to do your job properly. So that's something I want to dive into today. Not just, I do want to get into Tim's background because it's cool as shit. And once you hear this story about how Tim got into this and how he got his job, it's wild. But then how do you operate once you get there? Once you get to the point where you're working with the top 0.1% of your population, how do you maintain that? How do you stay fit for work? How do you stay fit for business? So Tim, let's give the guys a little bit of a background. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into what you do?
Yeah, perfect. So I mean, my origin story starts in Australia. I grew up in Perth in Western Australia. Great life there. Went to a great school, had a great family background. So I grew up in Perth, and I had like a keen interest in combat, I guess, from an early age. Like my grandfather was in the army, and I was always like, interested in combat to a certain degree. And then when I was very young, I started watching WCW. Like I was a big pro wrestling guy, like pro wrestling, like a lot of kids were, but like I was deep into pro wrestling. Like The Rock was my hero. Like I was obsessed with WWF. Now it's WWE. Like I was big into that. And I think around like 2005, 2006, I was still a fan of wrestling, but it kind of transitioned more into combat sports. Like I love boxing. I have Muhammad Ali. I have two different Muhammad Ali posters in my office. Muhammad Ali is like, I think, one of the most eminent people of all time. And when I was like 12 years old, I did a school project on Muhammad Ali, and that really took me down the boxing and combat sports route. And then that graduated into MMA. I think in around like 2005, 2006, I started watching The Ultimate Fighter. And throughout like the rest of high school and uni, I was just a massive MMA fan. Like in Australia, there were people into it. I was so deep into it. I had like a small group of friends that you're probably, doing jiu-jitsu in it as well. Like there was a small patch of us that were like mega fans. Even more so now, it's like my job is in the industry. I was like a bigger fan and knew more about like this fighter, who he's fighting, what his record is, what his background is back then than I even do now. So with that kind of like, I was so into MMA, so into combat sports. And then I went over, when I graduated high school, I went to school on the Gold Coast at Bond University. And I studied sports management. I was into a lot of sports. And I did a law degree. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life at that stage necessarily. And my old man had a law degree that then flipped into a lot of other things. So at the time I was like, you're 17, 18, you're like, I'll get it, if you can get into law, I'll get a law degree, see what that turns into. Sports management, like Bond University was one of the only universities in Australia that had like a really defined sports management course. So doing a double degree of that, I was like, this, makes sense. We'll see what happens. I always, back my mind, like wanted to work in sports. I think a lot of young kids in Australia, it's like, whether it's not clearly defined, it's like, I want to work in sports. And it was, I guess, later in my degree, as I was like really deep into MMA and just a massive, like when I talk about a massive fan, I'm like watching all the shoulder programming, the embeddeds, the countdowns, like all the fighters, like personal vlogs that they were doing, like undercards from fight number one all the way through, like just didn't like, was obsessed with it. And then it kind of got to a stage where I was like, all right, I want to merge my passion with my skills. I was doing pretty well in law school. I was doing well in sports management. And the big picture for me was like, I'll graduate from Bond. I'll go work in a law firm for like 3-4 years, get some legal skills, and then I'll figure out how to get into working in MMA. I just want to work in MMA. Like, I was so obsessed with it. I knew like the basic business structure. I was like, I want to get into it. So I applied I graduated in 2014. And back then getting like the legal entry was so tough back then. Like, so many kids had law degrees and getting jobs was impossible. Like, I applied all over Australia to like corporate law firms. I didn't get in anywhere. And I was like, at the time I was bummed. It was like failure. I was like, fuck, like I had like pretty good grades. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry. I was like, fuck. I couldn't. I was like a little bit upset about it. I was like, fuck, I can't get a job anywhere in Australia. Like, what a fucking waste of time. And that kind of led me to the shift of like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it now. I went to USC on exchange during my law degree. So I'd been in California before. I had a lot of fun. And I was like, you can get this J1 graduate visa within 1 year of graduating. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to get this J1 visa again, head over to the US and, figure it out from there. Just see what happens. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So I worked at Rio Tinto. I got a job at Rio Tinto for 6 months working the legal department there. And I was doing well. They wanted to keep me. And I was like kind of tempted, like, shit, this is a secure job. Maybe I do this. And then it's moving to sports management. I was like, nah, fuck it, I'm going. So 6 months Rio Tinto, I quit there, moved over to California with like probably 10 grand to my name, spent it all in a couple months. I was working at a UFC gym, teaching kickboxing because I did a bit of Muay Thai. I guess that's another part of my origin story. Is I was a Muay Thai fighter. I had some fights. I was obsessed with Muay Thai for a while. So I was teaching Muay Thai, selling personal training. I was working in a call center. So I'd work in a call center from 6 a.m. till 12, just like doing like scripted calls, bang, bang, 80 calls a day. And then I go work at the gym from like 12 to 8 p.m. for the first like 3-4 months in California. And then I hit up Audie Attar, who's the founder and CEO of Paradigm Sports, via LinkedIn. And Audie got back to me within a few days. And my email was kind of just like, I told him a bit of my story, like what I'm doing here. I was like, I'm just looking for information, right? I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for information. Audie got back to me. We got on the phone the next week. And the kind of Paradigm journey started from there. So long-winded origin story, but I'll give you plenty on this podcast. So
I want to dive into that a bit more, but I want to go back to the point of you being a massive MMA nut, because I don't think we're quite giving you credit for how crazy of an MMA fan you were. So for people listening, one of Tim's clients is UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. We all know Israel as the style bender, but Tim was so deep in MMA. Tim knew Israel back when he was Black Dragon, when he was fighting in China. When did you first hear of Israel, Tim?
So I was in my like Muay Thai gym. You know what gyms are like? It was like a real tight community. I was at Urban Fight Gym on the Gold Coast. And there was a kid, I don't know where he is now, a kid I used to train with. His name was Jag Warren, really good kid. He put me on. He was like, you always talk about fights and that. He's like, have you seen this kickboxer in New Zealand? I was like, no. He's like, oh, it's Israel Adesanya. He's hectic. Like, he's so good, all that. I was like, oh, cool. And then like back then, you go find him on Facebook. I think it was like right before his first King of the Ring tournament. That's kind of when he exploded. So I watched like one of his fights, and then like a couple of weeks later was King of the Ring. And like I remember Jag had like told me about him, and I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. And then they used to play King of the Ring on the Gold Coast. I remember sitting in my bedroom, King of the Ring's playing. I was like, oh, that's that guy that Jag was talking about. And he just mopped up everyone. He was like dancing on the way out. I was like, fuck, this guy's special. Like, this guy's special. And then I was like just a big Israel fan from there. Before I was anywhere near working in this industry, I was following Israel. So yeah, that's funny now how that's come full circle. But yeah, I was put on early from the gym.
I was going to say, I want to make that point because it's crazy how that becomes relevant in your next step of your journey when you're going up to Audi and you're approaching him for a job, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. My first in-person interview at Paradigm, I went into the office and we kind of spoke about like where the company was at and all that. That wasn't like really a job for me at the time. Paradigm was so much smaller than it is now. And the conversation was like, oh, you're from Australia. Who's like the next up guys from Australia that we should be looking at? I was like, honestly, there isn't really anyone that you guys haven't heard of that's like coming through the scene in Australia, but there's this one dude in New Zealand who I tell you is going to be insane. I tell you, his name's Israel Adesanya. I tell you, he's going to like change the game. And they're like, oh, cool. And that was like 2015. And then what were we, 4 years later, he ended up being, I was working at that company and we ended up starting working with him as a client. So that was funny. He was like my white rhino. Like after I started working with Paradigm, I was like, I'm going to fucking manage this guy. Like it's just wanted it to happen. And now we're here, which is awesome.
I want to get into what it's actually like stepping up that ladder and work. Cause you said like, you just knocked on the door and said, hey, I'm a guy with a dream. This is what I want to do. I think in this part of the world, there's some talented fighters that we can help and I can bring them on board. What do you think, Tim? What is it that say fighters see in you as a manager? Is it the fact, because when you tell that story of how you got started in management and how, okay, I was starting my law degree and, I faced that adversity. I wasn't getting any jobs. And then I had to go work this job in a UFC gym. I was teaching Muay Thai. You've got a law degree, you got a sports management degree. It sounds very similar to a lot of fighters' stories when they're coming up, right? Like it sounds very similar. They're like, oh, I've got this big dream. I want to be in the UFC. I want to be a boxer. I want to do this. I want to do that. And they're just working jobs to make the dream happen. Do you find that you get a lot of connection with your athletes because of that background?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more just like the work. You know what I mean? Like I can't sit here and say like I came from nothing. I don't come from like a crazy wealthy family, or like I wasn't handed handed the job. You get a lot of kids that just end up like handed in positions because it's like a family company over. So I can't say that like what I was blessed with was like two hardworking parents that gave me a lot of opportunity. So I had opportunity, I took that opportunity. So I can't really say like, oh, I resonate with fighters because I came from nothing and now I'm here, right? Because a lot of fighters come from that background too. But I think the fact that, as much as the term self-made is fairly subjective, it's the fact that it's like, I did have to work to get to this position and it wasn't handed to me, like regardless of my background, it wasn't handed to me. And I think, people kind of recognize that energy in people. I think in general, you tend to get on and give your time. Your circle tends to be similar to you. Like even like yourself, the people that we surround ourselves with, there's not a lot of like freeloaders or people that were just given things. Generally, I think energies just match in that sense. And that's why like you tend to gravitate towards people that may not always have the same background as you, but have the same like values and work ethic. So I think that's probably a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And Audi would have seen that in you, right? Like you would have seen the potential when you're going in there and you're taking this chance and, hey, look, I've moved my entire life to the USA to chase this dream. What was the next part of the journey? What was the next part of the story from there?
So back when I started with Paradigm, like we were small. There was like 7 employees back then when I was there. We're at 30 plus employees now. There were 7 of those 7. The only ones that are still in the company are me, Audi, and Sire. So that was a big turnover, and it was at a real like inflex point in Paradigm. It was like Conor's really like started blowing up, but at the same time, it's like the company was only 5 years old. It's like your startups are startups. Like you're small, you're scrappy, you're not that organized. So I started working on like a contractor basis type thing, like mainly in commercial deals, like hunting sponsorships and doing little things. And then I was doing pretty well at that. And I started working very, very closely with Audi in like, it was called an associate role, kind of an assistant, kind of an associate, but I became Audi's right-hand man from like 2016 onwards. And that was like I was super in the deep end, like super in the deep end. And it's funny because a lot of MMA managers, I went like the inverse from what a lot of MMA managers do. A lot of managers like start, you know, managing a few local guys and they build on the local scene. One of them gets signed to the UFC or a big show, and then you build that way. I started with no clients, like working predominantly on Conor McGregor during like the most rapid rise in UFC history, and then kind of worked down, well, not down to the local scene, but like worked the other way into management. So it was then so I started working full-time at Paradigm 2016, started 2016, and it was kind of on from there. And it was such a crazy time for the company. There was just like from the start, there was no slow build. I was just in and going.
So let's talk about that and break that down, because we're kind of being a bit blasé about it. Because I would say for not the majority of people, but for a huge percentage of MMA fans, they are MMA fans because of Conor McGregor. Like the impact that Conor had on the sport was so globally immense that it just skyrocketed. I think it skyrocketed UFC into the mainstream, what Conor did for the sport. And you were a huge, huge component and part of that process, right? Talk us through, what was it like going through the Conor McGregor era as it was unfolding in that circle with him?
Yeah, I mean, I started working just before the Aldo fight. So he was already, you know, well established as a UFC superstar. I think the Aldo fight when he knocked him out in 13 seconds, when it went like transcended out of MMA into like global sports star. And it was crazy. Like it was crazy. Like we did Aldo, then there was the Nate fights, and then Alvarez, and then Mayweather McGregor. Like 2017 was the craziest year. And I was young, man. I was like 23 years old, and I'd just come over to the US, and like I was so like motivated and was stressed and motivated, like just to get my foot in the door. And the foot was in the door, I was like, I'm going all in on this, right? Like I was like, from that 2016 time through basically to the pandemic, but definitely 2016, 17, 18 was like the most head down, working, stressed, crazy period of my life. I'm very thankful for it now, because I feel like the amount of stress I went through was like nothing really gets me anymore. Like I've hit my fucking cortisol peak. My body will never have more cortisol ever than I did in those years, right? So I've like, when you kind of been there, it's like, all right, everything else feels like I can handle this. You know what I mean? So it was crazy, man. It was a blur looking back at it now, but I was just like, there was nothing. Like I was dead unhealthy. Wasn't sleeping. Wasn't eating right. Wasn't exercising. I was skinny fat. Like I didn't have any good social relationship. I broke up with my girlfriend because of it. Like it was just blinders on 100% work, right? And I think for a lot of people that end up in where they want to end up, you know, call it success, whatever it is, there's that period of your life where it's just like all you're doing is focusing on this, and it's not sustainable. But yeah, that like 3 years of like I'd say from like Aldo through, you know, Conor's still massive now, but Aldo through to like Mayweather and the Habib fight as well was just insane. And I'm very thankful for it. It probably aged me 10 years, but I'm very thankful for it.
I want to go into it, and I want to deep dive into that, because that's some of the best conversations you and I have is in that exact realm, right? Like it's because you can, like even me as a health practitioner, you can preach all this thing as you want, but doing it is a completely different thing. Like you said, when you've got your head down, ass up, and you're really hammering towards a goal, it's very easy to forget all of that. But all of those things, your nutrition, your health, your fitness, they played such a huge role in it. Before we deep dive into that, we're going to deep dive into it. I want to dive more into how that experience with Conor has shaped you and what skills you learned, because you were battle tested pretty fast. Like that's trial by fire. You're literally thrown in with the biggest, not even combat sports star, one of the biggest sports stars, period. Right off the gate, you've entered this, boom. I'm assuming that every client that comes to Paradigm, comes to Tim Simpson, they want to get to that Conor McGregor level, and you've been there and you've done that, right? So you know the blueprint, you've got all of it. What were the main skills that you learned through that experience that has helped you with your clients nowadays?
Yeah. So I mean, for the rec, I was like, Audie is Conor's manager, right? Like he's always been his lead. So he led a lot of like main conversations, but I was right there and all that, you know, negotiated the deals, all that type of stuff. But as far as like general MMA management, you're right. It's like once you've seen that there's the ceiling's there, right? So you know what it looks like on the way up there. So it's like there's no unknown for us, for myself or my company, right? Like we've seen it, and that has helped. Like we just did a major deal for Israel earlier this year. Having the knowledge of what the ceiling is, I believe that, you know, Israel's like now the second highest paid in the history of the sport, or very close to it. So you know what the ceiling looks like, you know what's reasonable. So those, like, from like a tangible management perspective as it relates to numbers, etc., that's the benefit there. Technically, it's like from a negotiation perspective, it's not going to be bigger. It's there's like, I'm struggling to kind of phrase that. It's like a trickle down effect, right? It's like there's benefit that trickles down from seeing what the ceiling looks like. And as far as what I learned, there's all the technical side of like what an MMA, how to structure an MMA deal, how to structure sponsorship deals. A lot of big relationships made from working at that level. But I guess what I've learned that has carried the most, I'd say certainly like high intensity work environments and like managing stress. Like really, when I say it, like I was a wreck like at some points in 2017, like proper. I know like the idea of like adrenal fatigue is debated, but I was definitely like to a stage without like a diagnosable sickness where I was like bedridden with exhaustion and like just like couldn't do anything. Like after main event of McGregor, I basically slept for 2 weeks. I couldn't move. Like I just exhausted every fucking hormone that was keeping me alive and keeping me sane. So I say to a lot of people, like obviously like you still deal with stress, you still deal with headaches, you've got problems to solve. But from like what I went through those years working at that highest level, it's like it's almost like it can't get worse. You know what I mean? It's like not that it can't get worse, but it's like I will be challenged to find something that stresses me more than those years stress me, and it's like it makes me feel. It provides like a level of armor. Like, all right, I can handle this because I handled that.
Yeah. Now, going back to those 2 points, the biggest paid athlete in MMA, Conor McGregor, the second highest paid athlete, Israel Adesanya. Like you said, you've done deals and you've worked and you've managed with both of those guys. That's elite. That's elite of the elite. Like I said, the top 0.1%. And you and the team at Paradigm are coordinating all of this. Like you just said, stress is a huge thing. Stress is, whether you want to call this adrenal fatigue, whether we want to say attack, whether you want to call it chronic low-grade stress, it's a change to the homeostasis of your body. Whether we know the physiological function of what brought that on, who cares? It's something you have to deal with. When you're Tim Simpson and you're sitting in the driver's seat and you're doing this every day, you have to deal with that some way. Talk us through your process. And I want to dive in health, fitness, nutrition, supplementation, everything you do, because it's crazy shit. And I don't think I'm probably not doing a good enough job to really rein in how crazy your job is, because you're managing all of these athletes, you're managing all of their careers, you're managing their finances, you're managing sponsorship deals, you're maintaining relationships, you're talking to all these different teams around the world. It's bonkers. And you yourself have to be so physically and mentally fit to do the best by all of your clients. It's unreal. It's almost like you have to be a super athlete in the sense of how you handle your business. Talk us through, Tim. What are you doing every single day? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, you understand it, right? You're in a client-driven business as well, and any time where you're responsible for, call it the career or the outcomes of anyone else, like you must be attentive to that, and there's a certain level of pressure that comes with that. There's there's a lot of energy that comes with that, social energy. You know, on any given day, again, you're probably the same. You have a lot of clients. You know, in any given day, I'm talking to 50 to 60 people, right? And in direct, like important conversations. So it's a lot of energy switching around and it takes a lot. As far as what I do, it has changed a lot. Like going back to what I used to do, like I was pretty good on like health and nutrition back when I was fighting. I was obsessed with Muay Thai. I was doing it terribly. Like I was eating so badly. Now looking back, I was like, oh my God, no wonder you felt so bad in some training sessions. But I was kind of winging it back then. Did like a lot of bro science. I put on like 10 kilos of muscle when I was 18. So I kind of like had a base level of like understanding of nutrition, diet, exercise. But now I'm in like at where I'm at now, it's like I'm kind of just doing everything for the sake of performance, like mental performance. I've got an injury right now, so I don't really have any athletic goals. So what I do kind of depends on what the goals are at the moment. Right now, it's just a focus on like optimal energy, optimal focus for like work output, and just like feeling good each day. So like as far as like, as you and I love these conversations. Like it's a focus on like the 5 pillars of health, right? Like sleep, which has emerged over the past 5 years, is basically bigger than anything. I'm super priority. Like I prioritize my sleep big time. Sleep, diet, exercise, stress management, and supplementation. Like I supplement like crazy, you know that. Like I supplement a lot. So I can dive into kind of all those 5 pillars, but that's really what I'm focused on. Those 5 main things with the goal of like feeling good each day to be able to get the best outcomes with work, and like doing the most I can in a shorter amount of time, so you do have that ability to switch off and like have a valuable life outside of just your work. Like it's a 24/7 job. You're right. There's no like 9 to 5. Like you could be called on to do shit anytime. And sometimes I'll bang out like at an 11 p.m. email session, whatever it is. So there's no like, it's not condensed too much, but like generally on a 7-day basis, how to feel as good as possible and like feel happy and enjoy what you're doing, feel motivated. And that's the main thing, like feeling motivated and enjoying the challenge, enjoying the reward, finding reward from effort.
Yeah, for sure. Let's break it down because I want to go into each of those areas. And Tim ain't lying about the supplement. I remember me and Tim bunked together one fight card, and Tim literally pulled out a whole suitcase of supplements, and we spent about 2 hours going through them. But let's start it with your day. What's your non-negotiables? Like when you're waking up in the morning, every single day, what are your non-negotiables you have to be doing?
Yeah, so I mean, starting like hoping I get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Like sleep is so big now. And I think it's like the most recent like emerged area of health and wellness and performance that was like so neglected before. There was that like stigma of like, oh, you slept for 8 hours, you must not be working hard. Like you're an idiot. Like, oh, I slept for 4 hours. I slept 4 hours. Like, okay, cool. You're fucking dying and you're highly unaffected during the day. So I'm like more than happy to tell people I slept 8 hours last night. Like I wear the Oura ring, so I track it. I'm like, last night I slept 8.5 hours. I felt fucking great today and I had a good day. So sleep, like, and I guess I'll end the day with sleep, but non-negotiables now, like waking up and checking your phone, for like rolling over, checking your phone first thing in the morning. I think it's a terrible, terrible habit. I used to do that a lot. My phone is on like dull screen mode, do not disturb. I keep it in my room because I use it as my alarm clock. I know there's the whole thing, like don't leave your phone, whatever, like be practical. Like there's whole like, don't be woken up by an alarm clock. And that's like demonized, but also like sleeping through till 9 a.m. is also demonized. So I do wake up to an alarm clock most of the time. Like I don't care what people say. I wake up to an alarm clock, but I don't hit that, like start scrolling right away. Because I've got clients all over the world, business associates all over the world. I don't like, if I go into that's like you're in, you start working. So the first, like, depending on how much anxiety I have on like what's going on right now, like there's a big deal, there's a fight, I'll probably jump on the phone quicker. But ideally like 15 to 20 minutes before I even open my phone. First thing is hydrate. I don't know what you use to hydrate in the morning. Like sometimes I'll just do salt and lemon. I just bought like an AquaTrue water filter and it came with like these minerals. So like minerals, I've used Ketone in the past, which is good, but something in addition to the water to hydrate. Like this is my thing right now. Like I'll probably smash like that before anything else goes in. And I'll do it in front of a window with like natural sunlight. That's a big one that I've found is hugely beneficial, is getting sunlight as early as possible. So like hydrate, get sunlight. I'll usually do like first thing is like on an empty stomach, a probiotic. I can't remember the name of the one I'm taking right now. I'll do a probiotic and then get outside and walk, mostly like just move the body a little bit. I'll do that. So that's a non-negotiable for me for sure. Get out barefoot. I live pretty close to the beach. depending on kind of how I'm feeling, I'll try to go to the beach a couple of days a week, like even if it's cold, get into the ocean. That's like an awesome way to start the day, too, if it's cold. So like getting out and doing something. Sometimes it's just a walk. Sometimes I'll go to the gym and cycle. Last week when I was in London, I had like a gym in the Airbnb I was staying. So like I was actually on like the 30 minutes on a bike in the morning, like some kind of movement. Generally after I've hydrated, then I'll like open my phone and like, 50 messages one day, like try not to get into emails, but I'll like scan my WhatsApp, my text, and just see like what's super urgent. Like if I've got a client in South Africa or England that something came up over the night, like this morning, for example, Yuri Prahaka and his team just landed in Thailand. I prepaid his hotel, but the hotel was saying they didn't take my payment. So I see that first thing I wake up, I was like, oh shit, I got to deal with this right now. So some of the things you got to deal with like first thing in the morning, but mostly it's like, I know what can wait an hour or two. And that's a big part I've learned, particularly as my team at Paradigm has grown and I've got more support. 4 years ago, I'd be like, fuck, I've got to deal with this right now. I know what can wait now. Like obviously I want to address clients first, but a lot of shit can wait. So that's the morning, get out. I usually try and wait like an hour when I get back from that walk, I'll do a cold shower. I really want to get, I don't know your thoughts on cold thermogenesis. I love cold. I feel like a genuine benefit from it. I want to get a cold tub. I'm trying to figure it out where I put it in my house, but right now I'm just doing cold showers. So the cold shower is a non-negotiable, like that I feel great from that. It's almost like if I do that, I'm good without a coffee for like an hour. Like, the idea of adenosine, like that definitely stops the adenosine for at least an hour. And then usually within like an hour and a half, 2 hours after waking up, I'll do a black coffee. Like I try to stay fasted. So I do a black coffee. I don't know if we want to go down the supplement path, but
we definitely are.
Yeah. I got in the coffee, I'm doing always creatine. I think creatine's a dead set non-negotiable. I think every fucking human should be on creatine. I know you're big on creatine too. So creatine's a non-negotiable for me. That goes in the coffee. Right now I'm putting pine pollen and cistanche powder in it as well. What else am I doing? That's basically the coffee. And then that'll get me through, say I usually wake up like 6:37. My calls generally start around like 9 or so. I like to do like calls in the morning. I hate afternoon calls because it's I don't know. It's just by that stage, like my decision-making ability is kind of fatigued a bit. So I get like my most important calls done between like 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. each day. But if I've had the coffee by about 10 and I'm starting to get hungry, I'm big on ketone esters. Remember, like when I first started taking them, like probably I sent them to you, like, man, these things are fucking great.
Yeah.
Like, so ketone esters are legit for me because when you're fasted, it like boosts the fasted state, and that'll give me like another hour and a half of like clean energy to get through calls and everything. And when you're like on calls and working, I don't really think about food. And I'll generally break my fast around like 11:30, 12, sometimes a bit earlier, depending. Like and this sounds like I'm like so structured, but I think the general thing that is I don't try and get too too like obsessed with the schedule. Like if I'm like, oh, I know that I feel good fasting, but it's 10:30 and I'm fucking starving, I'm gonna eat. I'm not gonna like push through the discomfort. Like I'm not gonna be neurotic is the word I'm looking for. And then like I try and do. If I'm working out in the morning, which is very, very, very rare, I'll probably have some carbs in the first meal, but generally it's like a smoothie, which is protein, collagen, I've made smoothie changes, but generally try and get like a really high nutrient, high protein smoothie, and then a high fat, high protein breakfast, lots of bacon, eggs, something like that. Generally stay off carbs until the nighttime. And then, we're going deep here. With that first meal, I'll usually do, I'm doing Tomcat Ali right now. I don't know if you've heard of that one. Yeah. I'm taking Tomcat Ali, a multivitamin. I know there's like mixed source and multivitamin, but I personally think it's a good catch-all, particularly living in Los Angeles, where like the food quality is typically quite bad. I try to get the best food I can, but there's a lot of like environmental toxins and other food toxins here. So some people don't do it. I'm down for a multivitamin. I can't, if you can afford it, do it. Fish oil, I have fish oil that first meal. Fish oils are non-negotiable for me. Like I know I feel better taking fish oil. So like I'm definitely always taking fish oil. And that's pretty much it. Like as far as that meal goes, and then back to work. That's usually quite a big one around midday. I'll have, before I work out, I'll do one of your ones, like just the rice cakes with honey. Like that's a legit pre-work. I'll do that 30 minutes before I go to the gym. Usually train between 4 and 5 p.m. if I can. So I like kind of break my work up into that morning work, have a meal, another 2-3 hours, which is usually like, because as I'm like digesting that first meal, I'll slow down a little bit. Have that first meal, bang out more work, then do the workout, about an hour, whatever it might be. At the moment, I'm doing like a lot of squatting and deadlifting, so my shoulders sore. Try and sauna after the workout. I go sauna in my gym. Try and sauna like 4 or 5 times a week, 15, 20 minutes. And then back, I'll have another protein shake, then have like my last block of work for the day, like 2 to 3 hours. That's usually emails. You do emails a bit later in the day. And then at dinner, that's when I'll bring in carbs. Like I'll eat carbs at night. I generally don't have a lot of carbs during the day, but I'll do carbs at night. And then I'm actually pretty neurotic about my sleep hygiene. Like that one I am pretty like obsessive about, like keeping light low. I wear the red light glasses, try not to work within a couple of hours of going to bed. I'm not actually taking a lot of sleep supplements at the moment. I've like cycled through a lot of shit. But I'm just taking a clonia carba right now, which is great. There's another couple of supplements during the day, which I missed as well. I'm taking L-carnitine. Pre-workout, I'll take beta-alanine and essential amino acids during the day. And that's pretty much it. And then I try to get to bed like somewhat time between like 10 and 11. And I'm sleeping really good. I wear the Oura ring, and like my sleep's been legit. I feel like I've mastered sleep for the time being. But I sleep with like the mask, earplugs, mouth tape. It's funny, like I sleep like I'm like I look ridiculous when I sleep. But that's pretty much it. I guess like the big non-negotiables, that's like my daily schedule right now. Big non-negotiables is light in the morning. I've got my diet pretty well down packed. And then like some supplements I'll always take, but sleep, non-negotiable. Exercise wise, some movement in the morning, a bigger session in the afternoon. Nutrition, I know like what I feel good on. Supplements, I've taken a million things, that's some of them. And stress control, that I could be better at. Like I think there was times I was doing a lot of breath work. I suck at meditating. Like I think meditation and breath work is legit. I know it's like a learned skill meditation. Breath work, whenever I do it, I feel great. For some reason, it's like I struggle to fit that one in. But yeah, that's again a long-winded answer, but that covers kind of the 5 main things that I think is essential for everybody to perform well in that regard.
And that's the thing, right? Is what you just described there. People might be listening to it and being like, whoa, that's a lot going on. But realistically, from my perspective, that's a lot of the conversations I'm having with athletes, almost as the foundation, right? It's like you need these things like your good sleep, your sunlight when you're getting up, having some consistency and structure with your nutrition, and then having a good plan of your day. I'm going to be working out here, and so we're going to plan all our meals around here and setting out blocks of time for work. That is essential. That's the foundation of it all, right? How have you found this has improved your performance at work, your performance in the gym, just your overall mood, say compared to back in 2016, 2017, when you were just a ball of stress, everything was chaotic. Now that you've added all of this structure, consistency, routine, how are you feeling now?
So much better. Like, and you and I have a lot of sidebar conversations. I know I ask you a lot of questions, but like from that time, it really like the pandemic that changed it for me. It was crazy. Like that was like almost like I feel like not like life was going bad before then, but I just was like accelerating, and I didn't realize how unhealthy I was until everything stopped. Like 2019, I was on the road like 27 weeks of the year. I was away from home. I was like legitimately skinny fat. like I went to Australia in 2019. Look at photos of myself when I was like back home in 2019, and I was like legitimately skinny fat. Like I didn't run any bloods or anything. But I reckon if I ran like my hormones, my bloods back then, I would have had some like really, really not like I'm like 20. I was like 26. Like nothing that was like going to suggest I was sick, but like things at that age would have been so bad. So when that stopped, I got like forced. Like when travel stopped and we were all stuck at home, I was like, all right, I'm going to get this shit back in order. I started running again and everything. And now that we've got back to travel, where I've spent the past 2 years, like doing a lot of blood testing, doing a lot of research, talking to you, talking to other people in the industry, like, stuff that I kind of generally knew, but really like almost upset. It's become like a hobby, like how to feel good has become a hobby. I feel so much better, man. Like my energy levels are way, way better. Like I was never a guy who I've never had like mental health, like anything clinically mental health issues. Like obviously you get stress, anxiety and everything, but just feeling better every day. Like the main thing for me is like feeling motivated. I don't feel burnt out. Like times I'm just like, I can't be fucked with this shit. Like like I'm waking up to 50 messages. I'm like, fuck, I need a break. Like everyone just leave me alone for like a little while. Now I'm like motivated. I'm good. I feel good. Yeah, it's the, and I love listening to Andrew Huberman shit. It's like it's the reward from effort. It's like it makes effort feel good. Like right now for me with everything, I feel very dialed in at the moment. Like effort feels good right now, and you just feel happier. It's like you feel motivated, and it's like you keep rolling. So that kind of big switch a couple of years ago, like and now being where I'm at now, I just feel good day to day, and it's like I feel happy. I love it. Shit's good right now.
How much of an impact do you think making all of these positive lifestyle, health, nutrition, fitness, all of making that a priority in your life, how has that impacted your professional career? How has that positively impacted your professional career?
It has in an extent where it's like the stress, like we're doing, this year's the best year we've had, like from a numbers perspective, like the company's in the best place it's ever been. Me personally, I'm doing the best I've ever done. That can be attributed a lot to the growth of the company, but it's just like, I felt so burnt out. Like I was so burnt out, and now I'm like motivated to do more. Like I feel like I was masked. I was drinking like, no joke, I used to drink 5 cups of coffee a day, like legitimately 5 coffees a day. It was so bad. And like now I drink 1 coffee, but I just have like steady energy, and I just feel like I'm so much more productive. Like I'm at a stage. I'd be going to bed every single night feeling like I didn't accomplish what I was meant to do that day. And I'd be like stressed, like, fuck, I didn't get that done. I didn't get that. And then I used to have to like get to a Saturday, and I used to like, I used to take Adderall on a Saturday and like catch up from 5 days of not doing shit, just like burn at a desk for like 8 hours on a Saturday, like not be out with my mates, not do shit. And then Sunday I'd be like, oh, I'll go out Saturday night, like get pissed, be fuck Sunday. And then Monday, oh, I finally caught up from the week. And it was just like, now I'm like, I feel every single day when I'm going to bed, I was like, all right, I achieved what I wanted to do today. Like there's not a lot of projects where I'm like so far behind on, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just, I've been able to do so much more in such a smaller period of time. Just my focus is better. My motivation is better. Like, and I think like anyone can really do it, right? A lot of people like want to, claim like, oh, I'm so busy and this. It's like, there's not, without pissing my own pocket, like there's not that many people that are busier than the type of job that I do. I've just become very, very efficient through like prioritizing other shit, and then the work benefits.
Yeah, 80-20 principle is a real thing, right? Like, and busy is a very subjective term where people are so busy. Yeah. It's like, well, are you so busy or are you not so efficient at what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people that are like talking about, I've got so much shit going on, but then it's like you've created that for yourself by not having everything else in order. It's that whole like 4-hour work week principle, which is bollocks, but it's like, I don't like the complaints. Like some people are just fucking insanely busy, but like Elon Musk gets shit done. You're not busier than him. You know what I mean? Like get your shit in order. If you're got your shit in order and you're still overflowing, then maybe you need help. But like you know, and I like to see people complain about like how overworked they are. It's like you're just not. The reason you're overworked is because you're not performing in the time that you have. that was me,
And
for sure.
and this is the attitude why you're so good at what you do, right? And like when I have athletes and they're asking for management, Paradigm Sports is the first one that comes to mind because it's this attitude, right? And you see the results. This is the crazy thing that I don't think, particularly MMA athletes, they don't realize. We'll talk about this a little off air, is the importance of having good management and how pivotal that can be for your success in your career, even when you're just getting started. Like it can set up the pathway for you to have a rock star skyrocketed career, or if you don't do it, you know, you could miss so many opportunities if you don't do it and get good management. And that's like, and this is the reason why you guys do so well, right? Is because at the foundation, you're living and breathing it in your own life so you can do that for all of your athletes. Tim, last thing I want to ask you, if there's athletes listening to this and they're kind of on the fence and they're going, do I need management? Like, what's the point of it? What do I need it for? Is like, can't I just do all this myself? Which a lot of them do think. What would you say to those guys?
It's definitely a sliding scale. So yeah, I agree with you. And it's like people do need management to a certain degree. And what I'll tell a lot of kids don't at a certain stage. I guess people make mistakes in the way that you're framing it, in the sense that they don't think they need management. And on the flip side of that, there's people that think they need management when they're like amateurs or like they're 1-0 or they're 2-0 and they jump in. A lot of them will like sign with a bad manager early because, you know, like almost like it feels cool. Like, oh, I can say I have a manager. So it's a balance about getting management at the right time is the way that we boys approached it. And I've like turned down, without giving names, I've turned down some major stars that are in the UFC or on a global scale now that at the time reached out when they're like 2-0, 3-0. And it's like, I can't really add value. Our philosophy of saying, and I say this straight to young athletes, it's like adding value, right? How can I add value to you right now? Most of the time it's like, until you're like 5-0, 6-0, depending on who you are, like just work with your coach and fight. But when I guess to answer your question, it's like when you're at that stage where a manager can add value, that's when it's essential, right? Like unfortunately, we've had people that have come from other managers that have like, we spent the first year like cleaning up a mess of what you've done in the past, like getting it done correctly from the start, from like, what is your brand? What is your strategy? You know, what is your financial goals? What's your commercial structure? Like a lot of that you can fuck up early and then spend a couple of years cleaning up, you know what I mean? From as far as like, we don't work with a lot of clients. We have 75 clients across 5 managers. Like we keep it very, very tight. So we're kind of selective with who we work with, purely for capacity reasons. Like I wouldn't sign 100 kids hoping one gets good and then, you know, give them that attention. If you're with us, you're with us, and you have a lot of resources. But to answer your question, yeah, it's so much damage can be done by doing things the wrong way early. Like in any career, like any career, business, sports, whatever it is. So it's like get your foundations and your good people around you early rather than having to learn the hard way and clean that up afterwards, I would say.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that is so important for so many athletes, especially when you're talking about the amateurs, because you're right. On the flip, you probably don't need a manager until you start that journey and you're in that position where they can add all that value to. But when you're in that position, be smart, because I've seen it. Like we work with so many athletes. Like we've worked with thousands of athletes across the world, and we've seen that whole sliding scale. And it's so sad. Like I think it's so sad when you see an athlete who has busted their balls, they've given their life to this sport, and then they get taken advantage of by. And that's a real thing. That happens, absolutely happens. So it's good knowing that, you know, we've got guys like you, like Paradigm Sports, that we can refer to and we say, hey, look, these guys are the best and they're the best for the reason. Like you spoke about earlier, you've seen the ceiling, like you've seen the top ceiling of where these guys want to go. So you have the pathway for them. And I encourage any athlete out here listening, when that time comes, find someone like Tim, get them in your corner. Let's just say, Tim, I know you guys are very, very busy, you personally and professionally. People listening to this go, yeah, I got questions for Tim. I want to follow Tim. I want to hear more about Tim's crazy supplement protocol. What's the best way for them to follow you? What's the best way for them to email you? What's the best way to get in contact?
Yeah, the supplement stuff is funny. I'll happily give like my supplements advice. We didn't get deep on the feel free, your favorite one.
That is the best one. I'm keeping that for my own little secret.
I know. Yeah, just we want to get in touch, go Instagram's probably the best. I have like my public work Instagram is just at Tim Simpson. I won't give the private one. They go to Tim Simpson. That's it. Go to paradigmsports.com website. And yeah, I'd love to chat to anyone on this stuff. It's fun.
Is there an email if there's a fighter and they go, you know what, I think I would probably be a pretty good fit for Paradigm? Is there a good email they can hit you guys at?
There's a contact form on the website which has like a specific like fighter, not application, but fighter inquiry section, which would be the best for that.
Awesome. All right, Tim, I think we covered a lot of good stuff there. I think that gives really cool insight, even for the guys that aren't active fighters for themselves. If you're a business professional and you're listening to that, which a lot of people do, there's an insight. This guy is the top of the top of the top of what he does in his field. And that's the lengths that you have to go to stay on top so you can service your clients as best as you can. So, Timmy, I know you got a lot of things to do, and I know it's getting late there. So thanks so much for coming on, mate. We'll chat again soon.
Appreciate it, mate. That's it. Look after yourself. People got to look after themselves. That's it. That's pretty much it. But yeah, I appreciate it, mate. That was fun. Biggest respect for you and the team. This is easy for me, and I'm sure I'll be blowing you up about some new shit I'm going to try in the coming days. So
Tim has given me something. I'm gonna mention this just before we go, because I know people are going to message me and be like, what were you guys talking about at the end there? Maybe I'll get Tim back on, because Tim introduced me to this thing maybe like a few months ago when we were in, some place in the US, and it's literally changed my life in terms of energy, like natural energy. But we'll talk about that on another podcast. Anyway, Timmy, I'll let you get going.
Perfect. Cheers, mate. Thank you.